All right, guys, welcome. We are here with my man Anand from Underdog Strength, and we got a couple of questions that we're going to ask. But before we get into that, thank you for joining us on the Ranbir Sanghera strength, fat loss, whatever topic I want to talk about show. So welcome. We're going to get into it. Anand, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me, Ranbir. And thanks for inviting me to San Jose Barbell. You know, this is just a great facility to train at, even though I don't live here, but I would love to train at a gym like this.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's hopefully if and when you move out here, of course, doors always open. So Anand was here, what was that, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
So 2 weeks ago, we recorded YouTube for his YouTube channel about overhead pressing, and so a little bit background before I let Anand tell us a little bit more is, we're very similar in a lot of regards. You're 5'11"?
5'10". Yeah.
So I'm 5'11" and you're 160 or one?
Yeah, about 160.
160. I'm 153-ish, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, and pretty strong guy, very strong guy. And so it's really cool for me to be able to share people's stories that kind of show that you don't have to be a giant, humongous meathead to be strong and healthy and ripped and in shape and all that kind of stuff. So, that's something that I think is really cool. So, first and foremost, why don't you tell a little bit about your background, where you're from, and then how you ended up getting into lifting weights and all that.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Anand, and I was actually born right here in the US, in California, in Orange County actually. So my parents used to live here, but my grandparents were back in India and they were really old and there was no one to take care of them, so they moved back to India when I was about 3 years old. So pretty much grew up in India for the most part until I was about 21. Went to school there, went to my high school there, and grew up in I would say typical Indian household. My family is actually vegetarian because my family comes from a state called Gujarat, but I grew up in a city called Mumbai, which is one of the largest cities in the world.
Yep.
And there's even though most people don't know about India is that it's still a very diverse country. There's because each state has their own language and eat cuisine and all of that stuff. And one of the things that's common about growing up in India is that, or even Indian parents abroad, is that there's a huge emphasis on you need to study and focus on your studies, right? And
above everything else, that's the number one thing.
Yeah, and it was crazy because I remember I used to go to school every day, then after school I used to go for classes every day, and there was no time to do anything else, including like physical activity. And I've always enjoyed eating a lot. And if you're growing up in India, especially with the family, you're kind of like force fed all the time. And because of a result of a lot of these things, like having an extremely sedentary lifestyle and just eating a lot of food, I was like extremely overweight.
Yeah.
And even as a teenager, I used to weigh over 275 pounds, like 280-ish, I would say. And it wasn't a good time.
No.
Not everyone was overweight, but I think I was probably the fattest kid in my whole school. And it wasn't a good feeling at all, because you couldn't find good clothes that would fit you, and it was frustrating because it's not that I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah.
And in fact, I tried to lose weight so many different times, but back when I was a teenager, we didn't have like all the information that we have available today. So like, especially there was no social media, stuff like that.
So when did you come, what age did you come back to America?
I was 22.
22.
Yeah.
And so your like entire teenage life was in India.
Yeah.
What age, and by the way, just to like bring this point because completely forgot to talk about this, but you lost over 120 pounds, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So pretty amazing, and obviously kept it off. And this is not one of those yo-yo things. Like this is never gonna go back. So you came here at 22. What was the first time you remember, or what age do you remember being like, oh, I don't like this, doesn't feel good. Like, why am I overweight? What I don't like what's happening here.
It was as far as I can remember, to be honest.
So you always kind of
always, yeah. I can't remember a time in my life where I wasn't fat.
Yeah.
Because I was always this chubby kid, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I was like bullied for it.
Yeah.
Especially in India, you don't see a lot of fat people. Like at least, I mean, things are changing now.
Now more and more, not back in the day.
Yeah, and it was like people, just random strangers, I would walk down the street and people would just make fun of me, laugh at me.
Yeah.
So I was very conscious of it, that and I was conscious of the fact that people are like making fun of me and all that. So that also kind of pushed me into a lot of like social isolation.
Yeah.
Because then I was trying to avoid people. I didn't have a lot of friends. And the other thing was I was always aware of and worried about what other people thought of me.
Yeah.
But
so I was always active. I played basketball from age 6. I played in high school. I played in college. I was always the weakest kid, but like I was just smart and I loved basketball. So I could play. It was fun.
Yeah.
But long story short, before when people, I'd be like, what do you mean? Like I play college basketball. Like, yeah, I'm skinny and I'm weak and I'm skinny fat and I have a belly, but I was like, I'm active and healthy, right? Or I thought, and it used to piss me off. Now, literally last week, I have a guy who works at one of our family businesses. He's a little skinny guy, Indian guy, never worked out in his life. He probably is like 130 pounds. And he told me, do you understand Punjabi a little bit?
I do, yeah.
He was like, "Bhai, तुसी तो बहुत माड़े हो गए, तू तो मेरे नालों भी माड़ा हो गया." Basically, what that means is like you've gotten weaker than me. That's what he told me. So, so I just laughed my ass off because it's just funny because that's just what kind of people do. And this is the little piece of advice, and you tell me what you think. But if you are in the process of changing yourself, let everybody else off the hook. No, it doesn't matter what they say. And just be okay with whatever is being said, because don't allow it to put you in a bad mood. Like that guy said that to me in the past, that would make me feel angry, which is a bad feeling. This time it made me laugh because literally the day before I had deadlifted 435 and I'm like 155 pounds.
I said 3 times body weight.
Yeah, pretty much 3 times body weight, and it was like a chill deadlift.
Yeah.
And so I laughed, and that's the response you gotta have, and you gotta have that faith to keep doing what you're doing. So I'm interested to hear what you think about that.
One of the most important things you can do is learn to say no.
Yeah.
And in Indian culture it's different, right? Because people over here are pretty open about their communication. They're pretty assertive as well, whereas there you I have to respect this person, especially if it's like a family person. Or you can't say no if someone's offering you something to eat. It's just part of the culture, right? So it's different, but you have to stand up for yourself, because if your goals are important to you, then you're gonna have to learn to say no. Like whether it's people are asking you to eat out. I mean, it doesn't always have to be that way, but for the most part, especially when you're pursuing something, and this can apply to anything, right? People are gonna grab for your attention. They're gonna throw opportunities at you, whether you're trying to grow business. But you have to learn to filter it out and say no when it's time to say no.
Yeah, and it's like, at the end of the day, what is the worst thing that's gonna happen? Absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? So when you can get to that point where like you just feel good about everything and you find a reason to feel good, everything just kind of becomes easier.
And the other point I want to bring up is a lot of the people who are like initially very skeptical or negative, eventually when they saw like the end result of things, these same people came to me for advice.
How many times have you had that happen?
Multiple times, including my family members. Like,
and then do they listen?
You know that sometimes they do, but they do listen, but then they don't take action because they're trying to find out, hey, what you do, you know, tell me. Yeah, what's the secret? And then sometimes I feel, wait, this person seems genuinely interested. Let me break it down for them and let me explain exactly what I did. And I explain it to them, and they have this weird expression on their face where they were expecting some sort of shortcut.
Magical secret.
Yeah, like tell me what protein powder you took. But it's when I tell them it's none of that. It's the basics. You know, you gotta learn to eat right for your goals. You gotta strength train. That should be the main focus. And then if you need to do cardio, you can do that. But people don't want to put in the work. They're always looking for that shortcut.
Yep.
I had tried to lose weight multiple times, but every time I would lose a little bit of weight, I would just gain it all back. So that was a huge struggle for me, the cycles of yo-yo dieting, where I would lose 10 pounds but gain back like 15 to 20 pounds. So every time I tried to lose weight, I ended up fatter and fatter.
What kind of stuff, what kind of things were you trying and, you know, to lose that weight?
I joined a local gym back in India, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I just listened to whatever the local personal trainers, or not even personal trainers, just in India, these gyms have just general trainers that help out everyone. So that's something different over here, right?
And they don't know anything, like absolutely nothing.
They were telling me to do all these starvation kind of diets and doing a lot of cardio, which is what I did, and that definitely works because that puts you in a caloric deficit. You know, anyone can stop eating and just do cardio, but then what's the end result and what happens after you stop doing that? That's the key. And when I figured that out, I was able to not only lose all this weight, but I was able to keep it off.
That's huge. I mean, I have that specific conversation every single day, and I'm glad to have that conversation, because that's the whole key, is like every time you restrict or do something that's extreme, just by the nature of it, you feel shitty while you're doing it, because you're like, I can't eat anything. You feel guilty if you do eat something. So when you do something that makes you feel bad, you set yourself up for the rebound, where you're like, fuck it, and then you don't know why the weight is you're losing the weight, and if you have to keep that up for the rest of your life, like you're gonna go crazy. So then you just feel like, you know, a piece of crap, and then you just eat everything. That's the story of literally, I don't even know how many people, like millions and millions of people, right? Maybe even billions, I don't know. But and it's interesting because I was on the exact opposite side of that, where I was always the skinniest and weakest kid. Would you say you were weak too? Like,
I was pretty weak.
So like, I always say, people say, oh, it's about being skinny. It's not about being skinny, it's about being strong. Like, strength is the key. And whether you're skinny or fat, like, your goal is to get to the right weight for your height and then get strong. But for me, it was always like, everybody would make fun of me for being the skinniest kid. And I remember all the time, like any family thing. Did you guys speak Hindi?
At home, Gujarati.
Gujarati, okay. Well, for us, it would be like, you know, anytime and this was all the time, because obviously Indian culture is very family and friend oriented. Like, oh, you're so weak and unhealthy. You're so skinny. You need to eat. Don't you eat? And that just like, you know, bothered me to like I'm sure it had part of the reason to do why I wanted to continue to, you know, get stronger and be muscular, but it was not long story short, it was not a good feeling, right?
But it's funny you bring that up, because that was one of the things that I had to deal with while losing weight, because even though I was so overweight and I would lose like 5 to 10 pounds, and I still had 100 pounds to lose. But people were telling me that I'm getting skinny and you need to start eating, and there's this resistance, right? And you know, I don't want to call people haters, but that's just what you have to deal with, because when people see you changing, it's like it puts pressure on them to evaluate where they're at, right?
Yeah.
So instead of changing themselves, people try to bring you down subconsciously, whether it's your friends.
Yeah.
So even your friends will tell you, you never come out to eat anymore and you're
Yeah.
on this diet and stop dieting.